Okay, so this is going to be sort of follow-up videos, sort of me explaining something that's 1 year overdue. That's how I discovered it. But I recently got off with a conversation with some members of Topaz Labs, the creators of Gigapixel and AI upscaling software. And when this program first came out, it was targeted at photos and stuff you take with cameras, the realistic stuff. But I saw a different use case with me being the game modder that I am, thought about using it for games and upscaling the game textures, normal maps, bump maps, diffuse textures, stuff like that. Just the visual quality of it. And for the longest time, there has been an issue with that content, however, and that would be that CGI content kind of doesn't play well with Gigapixel. Now, if I give an example right here, the one that we've been using during our back for conversation with Topaz Labs. Here's one of the textures. I'm gonna go ahead and save this as a PNG because it's currently a TGA file, and Gigapixel does not support such a format. But this is what we're dealing with right here, just a game asset. And if we were to bring this into Gigapixel, there are a couple issues that arise, or I say a couple, but the biggest one being, if you may or may not notice, it's probably blatantly obvious. The biggest difference here is if we see this portion compared to the before and the after, it's way more vivid with blue. And we could just say that's probably just because Gigapixel likes to make colors more vivid. As we look down here, we can see the blue down here is also way more vivid. Colors just pop out a little bit more when they're upscaled by Gigapixel CGI content wise. But a big issue is looking at this symbol around this red, we can see that there is a smear going on. A little bit of blue, some green in there. But in the original, that's nowhere to be seen. And this has been an ongoing problem when you put uh CGI content into Gigapixel. It creates this problem every once in a while. And consistency wise, I think it has to do when you have a hard transition from one color to another. As long as there's like a smooth gradient, it doesn't really appear to have such a problem. But no matter how much you mess with these settings, you have a new mode called man-made, and that just makes it far worse than natural. There's wasn't really a solution to this, at least not with Gigapixel. However, during the time where I was modding a game, I found that there is a solution, and that stemmed from if we look at this. This is a multi-purpose map. This is 3 or 4 layers in one, which all hold different values that a game will use to pull from. So basically, these could be 4 completely separate files, but instead of doing that, they put it into one file. And we can see if we look at our channels, we have red, green, blue, and alpha. I look at these individually. It's a whole image, but all these layers contain an important part of information that the game will use, and all of these need to be kept individual from one another to be able to be processed by the game. And if we put this into Gigapixel, let's say that's a PNG first, close that, and we put that part in, it will it appears to have done an okay job. Like, yeah, there's alpha layer, but the whole thing is transparent. It's kind of weird. The after product isn't very looking good, but if we save that as well, and we look at the final image of what it outputted, it looks almost the same. But if we look at the channels, the alpha is the same, about the same. The blue is about the same, but the green and the red looks weird. Looking back on our original image, green doesn't have anything. And that's because Gigapixel looks at the image as a whole. It doesn't look at individual channels. And I think that's where our problem stems from because games are kind of reliant on channel data. So this got me thinking, if Gigapixel is ruining the image by looking at it as a whole, what if we forced it to look at the image at a per channel basis? So we take our original diffuse image. We want to work with these red, green, and blue separately, and to do that, we need to go and tell it to decompose it. And what this is going to do is split those red, green, and blue channels into grayscale. We can see here is gray. There's no more red, green, and blue, and they are now separate layers. So we're going to go ahead and save this individually. I'm going to rename these red, green, and blue, respectively to what their channels are. You really do not want to misname these, as when you put them back together, you're not going to know what you're dealing with. And now we're going to go ahead and throw these into Gigapixel. Now, taking a look at where a problem originally stemmed from, we can see that there's no halo effect around the symbol anymore. Same for another channel, and same for our final channel. Now, if you look very carefully, you may see it, but Gigapixel isn't trained for grayscale, it's trained for colors. So there are some blue, you can see like the streak of blue, there's some color showing up here. But in the end, that's not really an issue we need to worry about, because to be able to recompose this back to a colored image, we need to turn these back to the grayscale anyways. So any color that Gigapixel creates is going to be removed anyway. So none of that is really an issue. So we could go ahead and mess with remove blur or suppress noise if we want a smoother image. But we'll leave this at 0, 0. And we're going to go ahead and save these. Now, these are initially with grayscale. By default, the color palette is preserved source profile, but Gigapixel doesn't deal with grayscale. So if we try to save it right now, it's going to crash. So to prevent that, we are going to tell it to save as an sRGB and then save it. And then what we have are 3 upscaled images. Now, this takes longer than if we were to work with one image, but the end result is what we're looking for. Now we pull these back into GIMP, my photo editor of choice. We now have our grayscale. This is a larger image of the red value, the red channel. We're going to put green back in, and we're going to put blue back in, all in the same layers, or I guess separate layers. Now, if we try to recompose, we can't. And that's because looking at these, when we export from Gigapixel, they are now an sRGB image. They have red, green, and blue values, which we don't want. So we need to make sure to tell it to go back to a grayscale. And that will bring it back to individual. So now these are just single colors, or I guess no colors, of just our original red, green, and blue. And we're able to tell it to compose. We're going to make sure that red is red, green is green, and blue is blue. And if we recompose this, we have our final product again. This is what we came back with. Back with our red, green, and blue channels. Now, if we zoom in on this, we can see on this symbol, we don't have that haloing effect that Gigapixel was going to give us if we had upscaled this as its own image. And we can see that it is upscaled, like it's a little bit cleaner in some areas. The lines are finer, and this is an upscaled image. It just doesn't have that color problem that we were inhibiting earlier. And we can see here also, this would have been a way more vivid blue than if we had not used the decompile and recompile method. And the only downside that I found with this is that, yes, doing it manually is a lot more work. You have to bring the photo into an editor, you have to decompose it, and then you have to recompose it. And you have to make sure during this entire process that it remains a grayscale. and I haven't found a bulk image processor to be able to do this for me. So this is what you have to do on an image by image basis. If there is a problem, which I do this regardless, just to be able to prevent, you know, that oversaturation that happened here. This is a method I would do for all of the images I'm working on. So, I have to go and upscale a vehicle to the bench we're working on. There are one, two, three, four, five, six, 7 layers onto this. And every single one has to be split into 3 times to make 21 different images, which we then have to upscale and bring them back into 7 different images. It's a lot of work to do manually. And the developers of Topaz Labs have found that this method, from what they're seeing from what I showed them, appears to be giving really good results. And from what you can see here, it is giving really good results. That color issue that it's been having is completely out the window. There was no need to have to go through the trouble of training a new AI model for such a diverse range of CGI content just to stop that one color issue. And going from here on, after some time, they did say that they're going to try to implement this as an option that you can toggle in the Gigapixel. But until then, if you're having problems with Gigapixel with CGI content or such a thing, this is the process that you're going to have to take until such a feature is implemented. So, thanks for your time, guys. Hopefully, this had made it more clear if the guys from Topaz Labs sees this, that it makes more sense of what we're aiming at and what the decomposing and recomposing is supposed to do. They can get back to me if they have more questions. Or for those of you in the modding community, and I actually believe that there are some developers that are using AI to upscale. Because if you want to talk about it, 2020, if you look at gaming, is the year of remasters. There are so many remasters for games this year that might be due to the entirety of AI being able to upscale textures. So I think developers are actually using such a program. They may actually be using Gigapixel, honestly, because as far as I know, anyone in the modding community who's using an AI to upscale is using Gigapixel. And if you're having the issue, this is how you're going to have to go about it until it becomes a standard feature in Gigapixel itself. So thanks for your time, guys. Catch you later.